Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears, your repository of rusted out rides. We are here with my 1953 Studebaker 2R5 pickup truck. I have the camera strategically positioned because I'm filming this out of sequence. You see, this was not intended. I had not intended to be working on this truck, especially not right here. But a simple thing turned out to be a multi-week ordeal, and it has been absolutely painful. But at the same time, I do love working on this truck, so there has been a lot of opportunity that has presented itself along the way. I don't want to ruin it for you. Let's go back in time to a few weeks ago when I tried to move this truck, and then you'll get to just join me on this journey that I've been through. And then we'll cut back to the present and hopefully finish up this project that has really been unexpected and really expensive. Well, I wasn't originally going to record this, but a questionable decision is starting to shape up to be a very, very bad decision. You see, I wanted to be a nice guy. I wanted to give my tenant a parking space behind his house so that he could park next to his bees. Wanna go see his bees? Let's go see his bees. There's his bees. I wanted to be able to park next to his bees. So I thought, why don't I just move the Studebaker? All I have to do is hook up the battery, get some gas into it, that'll be fine, right? Well, obviously I got it a few feet. Then I got up to there, and that wheel is just spinning. Before I decided to do something really stupid, I thought I'd jack up the front end just to make sure that the front brakes were not seized. So I got the jack under it, and pretty sure that's supposed to turn. Let's check the driver's side. Pretty sure that's supposed to turn as well. So I've basically just been doing a brake stand this whole time. Managed to get it up that far, but yeah. I guess that means all of my projects are on hold, and I get to do a complete four-wheel brake job on a 53 Studebaker in my driveway just like this. So I guess the bright side to this whole thing is that once I'm done fixing this mess, I'll have a running and stopping Studebaker. That's kind of cool because right now the rear brakes are completely disconnected because the rear cylinder exploded a long time ago. And then when I replaced it, one of the springs broke. So I get to fix that. So I took off the drum and look what I found. A broken return spring. So this exact thing happened on the rear, and I thought it was because of leaving the parking brake on for a long time, but it turns out it was just old. So fortunately, there are springs readily available online that I can get. The bearings, I think I can clean it up, but it's not very happy. I'm not too worried about the bearings once I clean them up. If I can find new ones, I'll go ahead and do it, but I don't want to get a new drum. I don't want to completely overhaul this thing unless I have to, unless it really makes sense. The cylinder, I will probably get a rebuild kit, and obviously I have to clean all that up and repack it. But you see, there is a lot of meat left on the shoes. So these brakes actually have plenty of life on them. So at this moment, it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to overhaul the brakes and do a disc brake conversion if I can save this. So this is actually pretty simple. They're just bigger than the TR7. It's exactly the same thing otherwise. So I think next I want to, since I already know how this is set up, there's just looks like literally just one return spring up at the top, and then this isn't even a return spring, this is just a bracket. So even the TR7 had 2 springs, but whatever. We'll just get the 1 spring. I'm assuming, safe to assume that the other front is exactly the same. Not exactly sure about the rears. It's been a while since I've seen them, but I think I would want to rebuild the cylinders and also replace the springs on the rears as well, because I know they're broken on the rears. I just capped off the line and tried to hang on for dear life on the front, which wasn't all that great. So now that I know what I'm up against, I went ahead and bought some hardware from Studebaker Parts.com. One of the things I really like about the hardware that he sends is that it's really well organized. So I bought hardware kits for both front and rear, and they basically look exactly the same. So they are conveniently labeled to tell me exactly what they're for, and that is very, very helpful because otherwise I would not have known. I also got new return springs for all 4 corners. There's one in each brake drum, so I just went ahead and bought all 4. Even if it's not broken, I'm going to replace it anyway, just because it will break. I've already had 2 of them break, so let's just replace all of them. Let's rebuild the cylinders, clean everything up. And fortunately, like I said, on the front, the shoes on the rear also have plenty of life, so there's really no reason to replace the shoes or repad them. But maybe that's something I'll consider in the long run. I may have mentioned this in the past, but on the driver's side, all of the lug nut studs are reverse threaded. I don't like that. That is pretty terrible to work with, especially when you have to find new lug nuts. And so I have this tool to pull the rear drums, and on the passenger side, as you could see, I removed it no problem, but here on the driver's side, I've been having problems. Namely, the studs are stripping out. And that's really because I've pulled this before and did some damage while I was doing it and never replaced the studs. So this time around, I'm going to replace all of the lug studs in the entire truck. Once I get the brake hardware replaced, I will press out all of the lug studs and see if I can just match them up at the auto parts store. Just put new ones in. If not, I'll have to order more. But I'd really like to replace them with normal threaded lug nuts. So on this side, usually the procedure is that you just drive down each of the lug nuts little by little until the drum pops off. The problem is that with all of these stripped out, I'm down to 2 because I had 3 before, and it was this one, I think, and it ended up just obliterating the nut. So I don't want to turn these anymore. So I am now waiting on a 47mm socket so that I can attach that to my impact gun and press it down in the middle and hopefully pop this off. Because if that doesn't work, I don't know what to do. Well, this is interesting. So I pulled the wheel cylinder, and first of all, it's pretty gross in there. I mean, I kind of knew that, so I'm gonna have to take it apart, replace this rubber, and also inside the wheel cylinder itself, there is a lot of gunk in this line. So this is going to be very interesting to remove and to rebuild, and hopefully the brakes will actually stop the truck when I'm done. That'd be nice. So I doubt these wheel cylinders have been rebuilt at any point in the past 70 plus years. Check this out. So this is a cylinder. And so to remove the pistons, it was actually fairly straightforward. The only thing I was concerned about was the slot itself. I was a little bit afraid that pressing it with this slot was going to cause a problem. So I did use my press over there, but I wanted to put something inside the slot to keep it from, spreading out and mushrooming and doing whatever. So I used this impact screwdriver. Of course, I didn't really have to impact it. It just slowly pressed it in. And it didn't need a whole lot of pressure I just needed that slow and steady push to get through. So I used that, and they came out just fine, but my God, look at how disgusting they are. I mean, Jesus, this is the inside of the brake cylinder right here. The inside. Just look how much crap there was built on it. And here's the other one. It's even worse. Inside the cylinder, I don't want to lose these springs because, well, I'm going to replace them anyway. But inside the cylinder, I mean, geez, look at that. And then, of course, the inner seals are just filled with garbage. So this is really, really bad. I am glad I'm doing this because not only is this a learning experience, but I think these are completely salvageable. And by the way, look at this. Wagner Lockheed. That's interesting. Anyway, let's start cleaning this up, and we're only going to do these one at a time because I don't want to get overwhelmed. I don't want to get things mixed up. So we're just going to start with this one, and once we're completely done, the brake is reassembled, then we'll move on to the next corner. All right, so before I put this back together, I want to show you what I have to work with here. So I've cleaned up the pistons, and you can see that they're pretty clean. There was a little bit of cavitation here, so there's a little bit of pitting, but I don't think it's anything too severe. And in here, there is still a little bit of crud, but I'm going to try to clean that out one last time. But this is the outside of the piston, so I'm not terribly worried about it. Same deal with the other piston. It's just a little bit of pitting, but this one actually cleaned up a little bit better. Now the spring, if you remember when I took it apart, actually came out in two pieces, and it was not nearly as big and not nearly as beefy as this one. So that's actually a very interesting detail to notice. I've got new seals, inner and outer seals, and inside the cylinder here, you can see this cylinder, well, it's not exactly the greatest example. There is a fair bit of pitting, or there was anyway, and I've tried to hone that out as best I could using a honing tool. But as you can see here, I may give this one more pass before putting it back together, but I am actually kind of okay with the way it is. I don't think it's going to clean up much more than that. If you think I'm making a horrible mistake putting this back together, let me know. I do want to hear about it. But I do believe this will stop the truck just fine in my driveway. So I've also cleaned up inside here. It was just totally blocked up with hardened brake fluid. I mean, I'm assuming this pitting came from air and moisture in the line over the years. So this is probably something I'm just going to have to deal with. The point is, I'm going to put this back together and have brakes for less than $170. And I think I can at least accomplish that as a short-term goal. Now, one last thing, I did find a video that was pretty helpful. I'll post a link in the comments. You know, there were, I got to be honest, some moments that were a little bit, eye-rolling, but the video overall was really helpful in teaching it how to do this. Taught me that sometimes there's pistons that are different sizes, so I was looking out for that, paying attention. I got lucky on this one, but there were some really good tips and tricks to rebuilding this thing. So I will link that video in the description. Well, 4 hours later, I finally got it back together. Clearly, I do not know all of the tricks. That tool wasn't all that helpful, but I ended up popping off this spring to first put this spring on, and then I had to line everything back up. I had to take this out and put it back in, line everything back up, and then struggle to get this spring back in. This was not fun, but it's done, and I can move on. And so, as I was putting that side together, I came over to this side. I wanted to take it apart just to make sure that I line everything up correctly. And guess what? That return spring is also broken. So that means 3 of the 4 return springs on this truck are broken. So I went to press out the lug studs, and I got one pressed out. But then I noticed something might be a little bit wrong here. Just maybe. This looks expensive. So after doing some deliberation, I've decided I'm going to go with disc brakes. And that's because I was already fast approaching the price threshold to where this work wasn't worth it. And why is that? Well, that's because the brake hardware itself, I've already spent about $100 on brake hardware. And then on top of that, we're looking at new bearings and then all new wheel studs. And that alone puts me at kind of the most that I want to spend on front brakes. And to kind of top that all off, we've got the brake shoes and all of this other crap that just needlessly complicates the system, but also makes things a lot more expensive. This hardware only exists for Studebakers. So the kit that I'm going to replace this with is like a Chevy, all Chevy trucks front brakes kit. So it's a lot more universal. It's going to be a lot cheaper in the long run to maintain. But on the other hand, if you look at what I have in front of me here, this is all pretty good hardware. So I think it would be a real shame to throw this out. I mean, this was a lot of work, and these are perfectly good parts. Someone with an appreciation for keeping things original and proper restorations and making museum pieces out of their trucks will appreciate this. So when I do the disc brake conversion, I'm going to pull all of this off and put it up for sale. I'll even throw in the one drum brake for free, asterisk, obviously, because it adds a lot to the shipping cost. But I'll toss it in for free, the one good one. The one bad one, I'm just going to throw in the trash. And over here on the driver's side, of course, I haven't done anything to it yet, so I'm still going to rebuild this cylinder just so that I can have nice, just so that I can have a complete component kit for this side as well. And then I can sell them as a pair or sell them individually, whoever wants to buy it. But I think this would be a good way to kind of salvage the project, minimize the cost of doing the disc brake conversion, and kind of put something back out in the community that people will appreciate. Because apparently I don't appreciate it, or at least I'm not worthy of appreciating it. The nice thing about having a truck is that everywhere you go, you've got a workbench. So we have here on my workbench the disc brake conversion for my 53 Studebaker. And I have to say, at first impressions, it looks like this is going to stop a much bigger truck than I have. This is actually pretty impressive. The nice thing about these brake calipers is that they are standard Chevy truck brakes. I believe pretty much everything from the 50s to the 80s or even the 90s. So this is very common. I do have to look up what application this is actually for so that if I need replacement parts, I can get them. I got this entire kit from Turner Brake. I actually bought it from Studebaker Parts. The only reason I went to Studebaker Parts and not Turner Brake is because the order form on Turner Brake's website was broken. So I went to Studebaker Parts. They had the full kit, and it was really simple, really easy, and it actually came in 3 separate boxes. 2 boxes arrived together. The third box with the calipers and the brackets arrived later. So we have here new rotors with studs, brackets, calipers, bearings, dust covers, and some mounting hardware, and also a proportioning valve. So this is pretty cool because this will make sure that I have the correct brake pressure going to the correct side of the truck. We're going to start on the driver's side because all of my tools are already here, and I will only get more sun as the day goes by. So I want to try to get this side done first. I guess I should read the instructions. The first step of this operation is actually the one that makes me the most nervous. So putting on this spacer requires heating it up. like a lot. Like a lot. And you're supposed to tap it on using a length of pipe. And I think I got it close enough, but I don't know. Well, that was certainly a day. You know, putting disc brakes on a car that came with disc brakes is a whole lot easier than putting disc brakes on a car that did not come with disc brakes. And the reason is because you kind of got to take it a little slow. You got to figure everything out. You have to do a little bit of trial and error. Okay, this doesn't fit here. This goes this way, not that way. And eventually, I got it down. Now, one thing I want to point out is the instructions, while they're mostly helpful, they leave a lot of stuff out. A lot of stuff like they don't tell you which bearing to use where. They just say, install the bearings. So thankfully, there's plenty of resources on YouTube. And I found a guy that did a really great breakdown of how to do everything when it comes to installing bearings. So he talked about packing them. He talked about how you want to tighten things. You know, it was really detailed. So I will link that in the description because I found it very helpful, and maybe you will too. One other thing that I did not anticipate was I had to reuse my castle nuts, which is fine because I was able to find both of them. In fact, they were cleaning in my little electrolysis experiment. So they cleaned up really nicely. But I was not expecting that because I got everything else that was really the only part that I really had to reuse, which is fine. And also lug nuts. I have to get new lug nuts anyway, so that's okay. And on this side, you may notice that I am missing one of these clips. I took it off. I don't know where I put it. I'll find it eventually. I got plenty of other work to do, so I'm not going to kill myself looking for it right this second. I'll find it while I'm doing other things, I'm sure. Oh man, this didn't work. So let's talk about what happened here. I had this here tool on the hub, just like this. Well, a little bit better than that, obviously. And I had the lug nuts on over it, and I was using this giant socket to press against the axle shaft. And, well, all it really did was ruin the lug nuts even more because one came shooting out at me at about 100 miles an hour, and the other one, well, as you can see, the threads are just thoroughly trashed. Interesting thing about this, though, is that this turns just fine. So there's really no problem turning it, and the only reason I'm having any kind of problem is because the other drum is hanging and it's rubbing against its shoes. So the brake is not expanded and is not locking this thing in place. So that means it's stuck only on the axle shaft. Well, it's going to be a few more days while I wait for a tool to pull that drum. And that's going to be my last resort. If that tool doesn't work, we're going to do something really crazy. And rather than bore you with the details of the plan, because plans are boring, I'm just going to take you on that journey one step at a time. The next step here, while we wait for that tool to arrive, we're going to bleed the front brakes. The rear brakes are already capped off, so no fluid will go out to the back, and we won't have anything going on. We won't have any expansion of the valves or anything. It's just going to sit there and do nothing. But if the front brakes work, that means that whatever situation we work out in the rear, we're still going to be able to stop. It's not going to be pleasant, but it's going to be possible. So let's get these bled, and we'll see how the pedal feels once there's no more air in the line. Over on the passenger side, I ran into a little bit of a problem. See that there? The new caliper is rubbing on it. That's not good. I can't get this thing on the wheel center, and it makes a horrible grinding sound when I turn the wheel. So that's not a good thing, obviously. That means I need to get new wheels. I sure hope steel wheels are still pretty cheap. New tool arrived. A lot more expensive than I wanted it to be, but if this gets the job done, it was worth it. You see, it pulls on the outer sides of the drum and pushes in the middle right here, which is also why I've got the castle nut on, so that I don't ruin the axle shaft. So with this on, we're going to try all of the tricks. So we've got this, putting pressure in the middle, and we're going to heat up the center of the drum right there, and then we're going to tap on it to see if it comes loose at all. Well, that tool didn't work. So we're stuck with the rear end we've got. I have put that nut back on as tight as it'll go, and I was able to get 2.5 lug nuts onto the rear drum. And this is gonna be stupid. This is gonna be really stupid. So I do have future plans to swap this rear end out with the rear end that's in my Maverick, but I definitely don't want to do that on a hill, and I also still need to have that rear end in the Maverick until I can swap it out. So we're kind of stuck with this the way it is, but I think we're going to be okay to move it from here to there. Now on the other side went together much better. I was able to get 3 lug nuts on. They're on snug. That's about as good as it needs to be. But the drum seated nicely, and I'm not really worried about that side at all. Up front, we have brand new rims. And as we saw, my original rims, well, for one of them didn't seem to be original. But also, and the funny thing about this is that they're actually not bigger. They're actually the same size and the same back spacing. The difference is that the new rims are not as tapered on the inside as the old ones. So let's go take a look at this. This was on the wheel, so you're not going to see the lines that you had, but you can still see the tapering that I'm talking about. You see how much this kind of dives in here? And that's just because that's how they were made back then. Well, the new ones are not nearly as tapered in, so they were able to fit no problem, even though they're, in theory, the exact same dimensions. I got the new wheels, and these are used tires, just $50 used tires, whatever was at the shop down the street. And they're mismatched treads. I do not care. They're just going to sit there and dry rot anyway. And I'll just get new tires when it's time to get new tires. But we are so far from that point. Now, let's go do something stupid and dangerous. First, we're going to remove the front jack stand, set it down on the front, and then we're going to set it down on the rear. Well, why is that? Well, because there's really nowhere for it to go rolling away. Behind it, I've got to chalk the wheels. I'm going to use those old tires along with those rocks to try to keep it from rolling back. I've also got the truck in gear. So I'm hoping that this thing doesn't roll and crush me when I set the rear end down. was amazing. The front brakes actually stopped the truck perfectly. The only problem is I don't have any rear brakes, which means I have to park this thing in gear. So now let's get this thing back into the wasteland. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you so much for being a part of this stupid journey. As you can see, we have a whole lot of work ahead of us, but at the same time, this provided some incredible opportunity to get some really great mods done to this truck, to upgrade it, to make it a lot more drivable, and to get it so much closer to being a running and driving pickup truck. So I am really happy, even though it costs a lot of money and I was not expecting to spend that. So you are going to see a lot more of this truck coming up, but it's not going to be in the immediate future. You're definitely going to see it in the background of me fixing the S10. But at the end of the day, like I said, I want to put the Maverick's rear end in the Studebaker, which means I need to source a rear end for the Maverick, and I need a place to work on it. So that's actually going to be something very exciting that I am working on. And just stay tuned for that because it's going to be really cool. This is going to be a really great adventure. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, comment. And if you don't like what you see, maybe you're a Studebaker purist that actually, maybe you're a Studebaker purist that needs front drum brakes. If that's you, let me know. Let's get in contact. You saw me rebuild those wheel cylinders. I have brand new springs. You saw that the shoes have lots of meat on them, and I have all of the hardware ready to go, and I'll even throw in one drum. The other drum is ruined, so that went in the trash, but I will throw in the good one for free, and I will sell you the rest of the hardware at a really good price. Let me know. Let's get in contact. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.